everybody. My name is Drew, and I am a psychotherapist here in New York City. And today we're going to talk about the Enneagram 9 subtypes. Now, always when I'm doing these videos, I want you to feel understood, seen, and known. It is my goal to help you understand your personal accent. And so what I have to do is get underneath the hood and fiddle with all the gadgetry in there and see how this wire fits with that wire and that tube goes into this tube and what do those oils do and what does that fluid do. And that is my favorite part of the Enneagram, and specifically the subtypes really help us understand our personal accent. This is getting more fine-tuned, deeper in, and when I first found it for myself, I'm an Enneagram 4, and it helped me realize that, whoa, I do life in a different way than other 4s. And so I hope to help you understand how you're a unique 9. Now, we are always all 3 subtypes. And what I always say to people is you have to watch all 3. The self-preserver, the sexual, and the social. What people will do is they'll just watch their own, but they don't understand that these 3 are always working together in coordination. They are like a triumvirate. And so they each serve a role in our lives. Even if you have a dominant, maybe you are a self-preserver, and your most or least used is the social. They are still coordinating and working together. And so as we understand all 3 subtypes, we understand ourselves more deeply, and we understand how we move in the world. Now, the subtypes are instincts that helped us protect ourselves early on, and we still use them. For some reason, you chose a specific type of subtype to help you move in the world and protect yourself from the world. And then it hits up against your passion or your sin. So your Enneagram number, right? If you're a 9, then your sin is sloth, or your passion is sloth. And then your subtype, your instinct, hits up against that passion, and it creates 3 different types of 9s. And essentially, there's 27 different types of Enneagram numbers. If there's 3 for each of us, we got those 27. So we have a dominant and a repressed, and one might be really dominant, one might be really repressed, but hopefully as we get older and more wise and learn ourselves more, they start to look like this, and they start to blend, and they're all working together. And that's why I say watch all of them, because it will really give you a more insight into how you're layered and complex. The self-preserver worries about physical needs. They often are worried about their routines and what they're putting into their body. The sexual type is a one-on-one type. They look for exalted moments, intense moments. And so that one-on-one type will talk way more about the relationships they have with individuals or small groups. And the social type is worried about the group. How does the group view me, and how do I fit into the group? So you'll often hear when you're talking to an individual, them emphasize a certain type without them even knowing it. You'll see that the self-preserver might talk about needing resources and needing solitude to get away. And that sexual type will talk about the friends they have and the individual relationships and the conversations that are going on. And that social type will talk about their groups. Also, we are at a different level of health always. So from unhealthy to healthy. So even today, as I talk about the self-preserver, the sexual, and the social type, I'm really talking about a spectrum. And I'm usually emphasizing more of the unhealthy stuff, so that even you healthy types who have worked very hard on yourself can just magnify that. So the psychotypography, the little contours and valleys and heights that we have, we need to understand them deeper, and the subtypes help us do that. And like I said, in my own journey, it helped me really get deeper into who I am. So I hope that you watch all 3 and know that they're always working in coordination together. You 9s like to tranquilize yourselves in the trivial. You fall asleep to yourself. So this is a way to not refuse reality, to look at your shadow and understand it more. Because in the shadow, there's both good things and bad things. Things that we don't think the world will accept that's good, that we need to pull out. and things that we think are unacceptable that might need to be worked on a bit. So my hope is to do that with you. Again, my name is Drew. Hopefully this will be rewarding for you. And if you want to reach out to me for individual work, whether long-term or short-term work, or even just one-time consultation, get in touch with me. You can do that on my Instagrams or on my website, drewnewkirk.com or drew@drewnewkirk.com. All right, folks. Hope you appreciate this and enjoy it, and let me know how you experience it. So let's get into the counter type. That is the social type. So you social nines are going to often have a difficult time figuring out what your number is in general. So I've made this mistake tons of times. I can usually categorize a social 9 as a 3 or a 7. I've had the toughest time figuring out often what a social 9 is. And so many times I've mistyped them. And as I've gotten to know the subtypes more and more, I've been able to see the difference between, let's say, a 3 and a 7, which the social 9 can often be mistaken as, and the social 9. What is the difference? The 3 and the 7, social type-wise, are assertive. They go out into the world. They move towards the world. And so what you'll notice is this subtle difference in the 9s and the 7s and 3s, in that the 7s and 3s will push out very quickly. But the social 9 is still withdrawn, still lets the world come to them. And so they are a withdrawn type. 9s, 4s, 5s, I'm a 4, a withdrawn type. We pull back. So here's another example. The self-preserving 4 is the counter type of the 4s. They look also a lot like a 3 and a 7. And again, the difference that we need to look at is, what are some of the factors that the 3 and the 7 just don't have? And for the 4, that's the emotional range, and it's also that withdrawing type. The 4 is always going to pull back. And so the self-preserving 4 is considered the long sufferer. They don't look like the other 4s who are a little bit more open with their pain. They pull back and hold it tight. So you social 9s, you guys can look like workaholics, busy, active. You act against your passion or your sin, the sloth. You move against it, or what we would consider maybe counter-passional. That counterphobic type that goes against sloth to present themselves as youthful and reliable. Not youthful, useful. Sorry. So again, we can type them as a 3 or 7, and a lot of people I've heard over time, especially when I was doing my 4 subtypes, a lot of the self-preserving types were trying to figure out which they were. So I got the most views on my self-preserving 4s. Now, that also might be because self-preservers tend to be a bit more introverted and maybe communicate a little bit less with other people, and so they're going to the internet to find that. But I find that the countertypes often are watching the subtypes videos because they're trying to figure out, like, why don't I look like the other? And it's always, one of these things is not like the other, one of these things just doesn't fit in. Well, there's always 2 going with a groove, and then there's this 1 going against the groove. Okay, so that is the social 9. They look a little cheerful, more participatory. They cooperate really well, and they blend and merge with the broader group. So they've got more juice than the other 9s. Just a little bit more oomph, a little bit more of that second wind, that extra energy, a little bit of that, maybe what we'd consider that more active energy. It's out in the world. It's pushing towards, and it's sliding into how other people work. And it shapes itself into the group. So I'm kind of talking about you as an it, but you will find your fit in the group. So we see that the 8s and the 1s both sides of you go into action. The 9 looks very different. They kind of get stuck in the starting line. But the social 9 won't always look that way. They get jazzed or hyped up to get involved in the bigger thing. It's beautiful. They don't need to be the head honcho either. So they can fit into a role, but they like to know what their role is. And we'll go into that more in the future. And we're kind of priming the pump here. But they also might not totally be in. And that's where people can consider them not 100% in. They really need defined boundaries to be all in, to know their place. So we'll look at that also in the future as we kind of unravel what the social 9 looks like. But where they still fall asleep, where they still can be slothful, a leaf in the wind, maybe a boat set adrift, is in some crucial components. Their needs, their desires, their passion, their anger, and their emotions. That's what they go to sleep on, just like the other 9s. So this is where we'll start seeing the consistency. In their personal lives, they might be really active in work, but in their personal lives, they might fall asleep on their chores, on their administrative work, on their responsibilities and priorities. And maybe the close ones in their lives can get frustrated with them for this. So let's play it out. Let's jump in. I want to use this quote to kind of stabilize us social 9s here. And it's a Carl Jung quote. So, knowing our own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Now again, you social 9s can be really engaged with other people. So knowing your own darkness will help you understand the darkness of others. He goes on to say, what does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, which you 9s can do. You can kind of see things as in that optimistic way, but by making darkness conscious. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. They who looks outside dreams. They who look inside awakens. So we're going to hopefully awaken you guys to your insides a bit and talk about the counter type. So we'll move on, get ready. Hopefully this will be a nice deep dive into the social type of the 9s. And again, as I always say, watch all of the subtypes because you are all 3. And this might be your dominant. But you also need to know how it interacts with the other 2. And ultimately, we want to have a great blend where it's hard to tell. Are we being social, self-preserving, or sexual right now? Okay, let's get into it. So as we jump into your world, social 9s, one of the first questions you're asking yourself when you are in the world is, am I necessary to the group? Am I necessary to the group? You guys have a strong desire to belong. Now, we all do, but out of the 9s, you guys have the strongest desire to belong to the group in totality. I always say this, when you're in an environment with a social type of any kind, you're going to know that they're aware, they're looking around and being kind of aware of what's going on in their environment. And for the social 9, they want to earn their way in. I need to be at peace with the group, so therefore I need to perform well and fit my role. Let me know with clarity how I can fit in. And so they often look for something structured and organized so that they know their place and there isn't any ambiguity, any confusion about how they play their part. Tell me where I belong and what my role is, and I can feel more at peace with the group and with myself. There's an emotional security in it. And that is true for all of us, right? We want to know where we stand. But the social 9, their insecurity is born out of not knowing where they stand. And often they don't know themselves well enough because they are concentrated on the group. And so they don't have that inner security of knowing thyself, as Jung was talking about in my intro. That when they can shine light on the darkness, they can get more and more confidence in who they are in here, and therefore be better with the group. But often they are going from the opposite way, and the group is defining them. Not who I really am, but how you experience me. So, they are looking for that deep inclusion, but they often feel like they never get it. And that, to me, is not about you not being invited and included. Because you'll always be wanted, you social nines. You guys are good workers, and you play fairly with people, and you compromise, and you compliment. You almost don't have to be worried about that. But when you don't know yourself at that deep level, the insecurity of do I really belong will be there, and it will be pressing. And you'll feel dislocated from the group at times because you're dislocated from yourself. So, as you're worried about what you look like from the outside, you kind of have to reorient yourself and cooperate with yourself to find out what's going on in the inside. And this is hard for all nines. So as you start to disregard the group in a healthy way, for the sake of yourself, you will actually join better with the group. My one friend, who is a partner in a business that I'm involved in, and I gotta say, he is the best partner. He lets me do so much of the I'm a 4, so I know what my my emotions are, my desires are, and what I want, and he'll be okay with that. He has some guidelines, financial responsibility, some boundaries in what we spend, but he will tell me that he will go along to get along. And I have to be very conscious of this as a 4 with very strong opinions and desires and passions and interests and ways to put myself into the world, that when I am collaborating with a social 9, that he will go along to get along. And there is a diminishment of self in the service of our partnership or in the group, what we're doing together in this business. And so I have to be conscious. He also has to be conscious to push back when appropriate. That's where the deep intimacy comes, is with confrontation regularity. Let me say that again. Confrontation regularity. When confrontation is consistent and it's understood that we will be pushing back on each other. That yes, belonging to the group is difficult. And a social 9 might not feel connected to the group at times, and it can sadden them. But they have to challenge themselves to push where they are weak and shape themselves into a person that collaborates well. And to collaborate well, you have to confront and not diminish self. So this partner I have, and one of my best friends, I'll sometimes have to ask him very specifically where he's at, because he might not tell me. But also, I try as a 4 to set up an environment that's safe for him. Now, it is his responsibility to push back his own boundaries and move past tranquility and safety of being liked by the group and being accepted by the group, to fight the demons inside so that he can get some of what he wants, because it's his money. It's also partly his dream. So this is the hard work. Can you say no? Now, he has told me I have pretty strong values and I won't compromise. I won't do a certain thing, but flakiness and indecisiveness, and not coming directly out and saying, I won't do this or that, can put him in a position in which he has to make up for it later. So you social 9s, when you can be flaky and indecisive in the group, because while you already know your values, but you don't want to disrupt, this is a place you can push past that and start to feel more secure internally as you get to know yourself better, and then push out into the world. Yes, you might feel like you are letting people down and wanting to make people happy, but to keep the family connected, sometimes you have to rile it up, be unsentimental, and not be concentrated on that fusion, but on getting the right results. Think about it as a social 9. What are you worried about? Who are you worried about appeasing? I also think about it like this for you social 9s. You have to cook more food because you have a bigger audience. The self-preserver and the sexual type, they don't have the weight of how many people and how many masters you social 9s are serving. Higher number means higher responsibility. So because you are so group-oriented, you have the pressure of a lot of people to serve. And because you want to serve them, to diffuse any kind of negativity and keep the peace, that's a lot more cooking you have to do. So, if you can find a way to renew daily your commitment to yourself and to moving the group forward, not through just peace, we all need that, but also through getting your way, getting some of your desires met. It's a great place to start. All right, let's move on to the next part. Now, before we get to workaholism, which you social 9s can suffer from, let's just talk about some of the names, the monikers that are given to the social 9s. There is the periphery partner, there is the collaborator, but one that I have seemed to like the most, that I gravitate towards, is the anchor. I just think of, like, I'm a tattooed guy, so I'm into tattoos. I'm into some like classic tattoos, and one of the most classic tattoos is the anchor. You know, that like nautical tattoo where so many people have a good anchor somewhere on their body in their tattoo life. And so in the hipster sense, I love this idea. And as I started to get comfortable understanding the social 9, I started to see how these people were anchors. And in a very different way than a 3 would be, for example. Where a 3 would take command, take a leadership role that's probably getting more attention. It is less subtle, more overt. The anchor, the social 9, can sit in the middle of the room and just hold us together. One of the interesting things, even as my friend right now is dating a social 9. First time I ever hung out with her, I saw how she navigated the room and connected with everybody, but also at dinner, sat right in the middle between my buddy and I, which is a good thing because we can bump heads at times, and right across from 3 other people. So she was giving all of the attention to these new people while also having someone she had heard about, because I was new to her, but we connected pretty quick, and her boyfriend on the right-hand side. So she had these pieces that were familiar to her, while also having these other folks that she was going to look at and give attention to. So she can do this and do this. She acted as the perfect anchor, and not in a dominating way, not in a powerful way in the obvious sense, but a powerful way in the very subtle sense. So I love that idea of the anchor, that they can be recruited. And in a sense, I wanted her to sit next to me. Her energy, her vibe, it's like the counter sexual 4. Say like the bizarro sexual 4. I'm a sexual 4. I've got feist, I've got desire and passion and intensity. And to have a nice social 9 sitting next to me that's a bit lighter, a great energy, it's a great compliment. And so in my own life, I've kind of seen the social 9 as a great complement to a sexual 4 that has a bit more anger and feist. They will participate, and they don't seek out that leadership role. They will be recruited. And if you are watching this and you aren't a 9, or even if you are a self-preserving 9 or a sexual 9, you'll notice how easily social 9s are recruited. But they don't need to be in a position of leadership. And that's the beauty of them. This is where they can be the peripheral partner. And in my own life, as I was talking about my friend in the past, he is powerful in the partnership in our business, but he is a peripheral partner. A lot of the aesthetics, a lot of the planning, a lot of the coordinating with the other people involved in the business, I'm doing. But he's there as an anchor, as a source of strength, and also a source of subtle, reliability. They can be great leaders, though, in that they take a great consensus of the group. Now, as that anchor in the middle, they're going to see and listen to what the group wants. So often they can package that, put it together, and reveal it to others and say, this is what I'm hearing. This is what's going on in the room. And what I tell social 9s, though, and I say this to all 9s in general, is when you are thinking about your career, you're thinking about your purpose and the things you want to do, you can't fall asleep emotionally on that. You can't fall asleep to yourself in this time when you are thinking about what you want to do in the world. Because as an anchor, you are so crucial. And so you need to realize that when you are in the river with these other people, you also have a paddle too. And so sometimes I'll have 9s, my clients, do a consensus sheet and a declaration sheet. And the declaration sheet will always come before the consensus sheet. So you're good at getting consensus, right? You're good at asking people. So maybe something's going on in your life and you ask a bunch of people and then you get confused. You go, I got all these ideas because 9 people told me this thing and they all told me different things and I don't know where to go. And 9s, you often get into this spot, right? Where you're trying to shape your next move around what the consensus is and it's all different. You can't really sometimes get that consensus. So if you do a pre-consensus sheet, a declaration sheet, what do I know I want? What do I know I like? Even if it's subtle and quiet. And you write those down. And after you get the consensus, you come back to it. And now you go, okay, I've heard these voices, but this is where I originally started from. It can be a very powerful position to have, to go into those conversations and not influence the people you're going to get a consensus from, but to have your fundamentals put in place as a contingency to you getting stuck in the thoughts of what others think you should do. So that is it's a challenge to you, social 9s, as you are leading and as you are this anchor, that you also know what is fundamental to what you want and what you love and what places you want to go next. All right, so let's jump now into workaholism. You'll love this part. So let's talk about the workaholic in you social 9s, you grinders, you deliberate pushers of the pace inside of yourselves. You are, I would say, like a sloth with a carrot in front of your face. You've heard the idea of putting a carrot in front of the horse. Well, this is like a carrot in front of the sloth. You guys are going to move faster than the other 9s, but you're still kind of a sloth. So as I said before in the past, which was there isn't the same need to lead, but there is an incredible need to perform, right? So you guys want to perform well. You can be instantly likable and worthy of an invite, and you will perform to make sure that you solidify that need of others to bring you in. I have a social 9 client who says, once I start something, I will carry it through. It's the starting. The starting is the non-peaceful process. And that is where the carrot in front of you really helps, keeps you going. Now, what you have to make sure you concentrate on is not forfeiting yourself for the group. So they put the needs of the group above their own needs. They can work so hard towards a crash. Think about this, social nines. How many times have you crashed because you worked so hard? Because you struggle to say no. And the idea of this context that we're going to play with is, when is it okay for you to be done and say no? I have another social nine client who I had a tough time typing her when I was first getting the Enneagram, and she's one of my longest standing clients. And she works in the corporate world and works on the behalf of C-level leaders. So CEOs, COOs, CFOs. I had the toughest time figuring out what she is. I wasn't sure if it was a 3 because there's such a driven energy there. And her psychological agenda is to please the group. And she's done this to the neglect of herself. So when she first came to me, there was a worn out woman who had served so many others, but hadn't found the ability to be assertive and find her individual expression and ownership, which a 3 would naturally do. A 3 would be assertive, find their individual expression, and take ownership of what they are doing. So yes, you social nines can lean on the high side of 3. You know, when you guys, 9s in general, are looking healthy, you got a 3 component there. You're getting shit done and you're moving to action. But the specific things you can struggle with is what the 3 doesn't, which is taking ownership of the role they're in and the desire to follow it through and make things happen. You know, there's that idea that there's no I in team, and you guys hold to this very strongly. You also don't look opposed to the way it works. Life works in a certain way. We have to grind, we have to hustle. Especially in America, there is a certain ethos, a mentality of work. And you guys don't seem to push against that as much as the self-preserver and the sexual do. Now, again, I've talked about my friend, and there is a massive trade-off in our business relationship. He gets to be a part of something with a person who is very driven and passionate about a project. And he gets to enjoy the spoils of that. Probably couldn't create it on his own or wouldn't create it on his own. But he needs to know where he fits in and needs to know that there is a role he's playing that is foundational and fundamental to the movement of this thing forward. So there is a massive trade-off in the group receives something, and there is a light and easy and effective character that comes with that. But what I think you guys can do is also take more ownership. And then there is some kind of compromise that's built out there. So we're looking for the signs of who you are. And you're often looking for the signs of who you are through others. So you need to find a bit more of an independent soul within yourself. I had a social 9 recently who's really worked hard on herself tell me, I love when things are about me now. It feels great to say and hard to say out loud, but it's always been there, she said. I've always wanted to own that I like when things are about me, that there's some self-focused feel, and she has disowned desire, and now she's gaining it back and recognizing when to belong and when to be bold, and to be celebrated for her individuality. So this is what I talked about in the overall talk on the overview of the 9s, where I talked about self-promotion and boldness. 9s don't want to take up too much space. but you need to grab some of the spotlight. You'll never grab the spotlight like a 4 and a 3. I'm way too narcissistic for you to win that war. But you can find a bit more self-involvement and luxuriate in your gifts, like a 3 would or a 4 would. And then err on the side of arrogance. Err on the side, because you'll never be arrogant, likely. Maybe internally, you're comparing yourself to others and judging them. But you don't extrovert arrogance too much. So when you are worried that you'll come off as cocky, it would take you light years to get there. So err on the side of feeling yourself a little bit. And this is the beauty of you social 9s. So I'll just close by saying, if you are wanting to continue to work on this, hey, get in touch with me if you need to, and I'm available. Also, I hope that you do me a little solid and subscribe, and you'll know when I come out with new content. I'm going to hopefully come out with content over and over again. But I hope for you social 9s that you continue to move forward, be a great part of the group, and be a powerful part of the group. And know who you are inside so that you don't look for the group to define you. All right, as always, everything is yet to be done. Everything, in the words of Rainer Marie Rilke. Have a good one, guys.